Hi everyone, thank you for attending our Hangout today. I'm Brianna Davis with internationalstudent.com, and today we're going to mix it up a little bit. Typically we talk about studying inside the US. Today we're going to talk about studying abroad inside the UK, so the United Kingdom. Now, if you are someone who is studying inside the US currently and you want to spend a semester or a year abroad in the UK, or perhaps you're trying to decide if studying in the US versus the UK, which one would be better for you, this is the perfect hangout for you today. We're going to give you some information on what it's like to study abroad inside the UK. We're not really going to dive in the logistics of how to get there, how to do it, but what to expect once you do. That way, if you're on the fence about it or you're trying to decide if it's the best fit for you, this might hopefully help guide you in the right direction. Okay, so as always, send in your questions through the chat feature and we'll get to those in the end, and let's go ahead and get started. So first you can see change of pace. My little guy is running, he's at a different pace. But what I mean by this is you're going to have a little bit of a different learning experience inside the classroom. As someone who studied abroad in the UK, I can tell you I had a little bit of a period of adjustment whenever it came to the learning structure inside the classroom. Inside the US, you typically have a lot of essays and tests and projects, a lot of reading assignments throughout the semester. Inside the UK, you're going to see it's pretty different. It's mainly going to be lecture-based. Usually you'll have a big project or a test at the very end, and that's what your main grade will be based upon, is that project or that test or that big essay, whatever it is that you have at the very end. You're not going to have a lot of those throughout the semester along the way. I know for me, I was pretty worried for the first few weeks, thinking that I'd missed out on some document that had all the reading assignments on it and the essays that I should have been turning in and things like that. Come to find out, I wasn't missing out on that secret sheet. It was just a different way of learning. So it'll be quite an adjustment period. It'll be very nice if you have that long holiday weekend that you want to travel to, over to Italy or to France or something like that. It'll be nice that you don't have those assignments while you're there. Just, try to relax and tell yourself it's just a different style there. All right. Next, we have great education. So just because you're not swamped in homework doesn't mean that you're not going to be getting a great education. In fact, the educational system in the UK is held in very high regard. It's top-notch. According to the Times Higher Education, 2 of the top 5 schools in the world were located in the UK in 2014. Just in case you're wondering, it's the University of Cambridge and the University of Oxford. So you can, if you did not already know this, you can get an excellent education inside of the UK. Now, for those of you who are interested in becoming directly enrolled in a school in the UK, meaning you apply directly through them, you're not going through your home school for an exchange, so you're not directly enrolled in your institution in your home country. You're going to be directly enrolled in the school in the UK. Something to keep in mind is that it's typically going to take less time to obtain that degree inside the UK than the US. So if you're trying to decide between the two, this might be a big factor for you. So let's go ahead and take a look at the differences here. So we have for a bachelor's degree, now keep in mind this is generally speaking, it's not going to be always, especially if you look at the time frames within Scotland. But for a bachelor's degree inside the UK, usually it'll be about 3 years to obtain that, whereas the US will be about 4. For a master's, it might take only 1 in the UK, but then 2 within the US. And then for your PhD, it might only take 3 within the UK and then 5 to 7 within the US. So it's a little bit of a difference there. This is especially nice if you just want to get through quick. You'll be able to enter the job force quickly whenever you study in the UK if you're able to obtain your degree quicker. Plus, you'll be spending less money overall. Of course, you'll have less years to pay for, so that can save you some money in the end. All right, next we have a new living situation. So if you're from the US, you might be very accustomed to dorms or halls of residence, as they say in the UK. And they are going to have these, and I highly recommend that whenever you study abroad in the UK, you take full advantage of them. But you're not going to be they're not going to be mandatory. You're not going to be regulated to stay in them. Often in the US, your very first semester or year, you're required to stay in the residence halls. International students in the US are often required to stay in those halls. In the UK, usually you're going to have a bit more flexibility. They're going to allow you to go off campus and find a flat that you can rent with other students. But just because they're allowing you to do this, that's a great opportunity to get involved in the community. But keep in mind that whenever you do stay in the halls of residence, you are going to have access to a number of other students that you can become friends with. You'll literally have access to them 24/7. So it's a really great chance to meet other individuals and to develop the bonds that you might not otherwise if you're staying off campus and you only have a couple of roommates. So that's one thing that you will want to keep in mind. All right, next, fewer car rides. So in the US, you typically take a car everywhere. There's not a whole lot of public transportation opportunities unless you're within a city. Over in the UK, they have an outstanding public transportation system, within cities. So perhaps you're in London, you'll have the tube, or perhaps you're not within a deep city. You're still going to have a train that you can take from town to town. It's really convenient to use public transportation. You're going to come home with a brand new skill set. That's how to navigate public transportation successfully. It really is a skill, and you will master it by the end of the year or semester. It might be kind of a pain at first because the first few grocery trips you're going to buy everything that you need, just like you would whenever you have your own car, and then you'll quickly realize that your arms get very tired very quickly, so that will change. So there are a few instances that it's not going to be convenient not having a car, but there's also a lot of benefits as well to taking public transportation. First of all, whenever you drive, you have your eyes set on the road, you're trying to navigate, trying to get around. If you are from a country where you drive on the right, then you're going to be trying to stay to the left. There's a lot of obstacles, but whenever you're taking public transportation, it's going to give you the chance to really observe your surroundings. You can see the countryside around you. You can perhaps meet and talk to the person who's sitting next to you. So it's just another opportunity for you to dive into the culture. So it might seem like a hindrance, but look at it as an opportunity because it really can be one. All right, next, culture shock. So you might be thinking, we both speak English. Is it really that different? Yes, it is going to be different. You more than likely will go through culture shock. That's perfectly normal, perfectly fine. Usually it goes away quite quickly as long as you do your best to handle it well. But let's go ahead. We're going to do a fun little quiz and test your British knowledge just in case you are really thinking that there's not a whole lot of difference to the way that we speak. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first question. This is a little quiz, so send in what you think is the correct answer through the chat feature. After we do the 3 questions, I'll tell you the correct answer. So send that in. We'll see how you guys do. All right, the first question. A boot in the US is something you wear. In the UK, it's A, something you eat, B, the trunk of a vehicle, or C, a nickname for friends. So send in what you think the answer is. Send it in through the chat feature. You don't have to type in the whole answer. You can just put A, B, or C. That's fine. No problem, but let's see how you guys are able to do. If you don't know or if you're embarrassed, then that's fine. Don't send it in. All right, second question. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. What's called a hob in the UK is called a blank in the US. So is that called a stove in the US? Is it called a grill in the US? Or is it called a microwave in the US? So what they call a hob in the UK is called a what in the US? So send in your answer to that, A, B, or C. And third, to test your British knowledge, if you're searching for a restroom in the UK, how do you ask? Do you say A, where's the wardrobe? B, where's the crusty dragon? Or C, where's the loo? So send in your answers to those. I'll give you just a moment here. I know there's a slight delay. Hopefully you guys know the answer to some of those. If not, then you will learn the answer after today. So let's go ahead. I'm going to give you the answer now. Let's see how you did first. So the first one, a boot in the US is something you wear. In the UK, it's B, the trunk of a vehicle. So in case you didn't know, it's the trunk of a vehicle. The second one, what's called a hob in the UK is a stove in the US? So you cook on a stove or a hob. And then the third question, if you are searching for a restroom in the UK, you ask, where's the loo? Now for this one, it might vary a little bit. They could say, toilet or WC or something like that, but the most polite way, and typically if you say, where's the loo, they'll know what you're talking about. So just some fun. If you didn't know those before, that's just something to kind of start you on the British slang, get your feet wet. But there's going to be a lot of other differences whenever you study in the UK as well. It's not just going to be words. It's going to be, things from food to fashion, driving on the opposite side of the road, the classroom structure, all the things that we've talked about. You'll also notice a lot of little things also. For example, you might not have your favorite snack in the convenience store. The music playing at the gym will be greatly different. The sights and sounds on the streets, the smells, everything will be different. And there might be just a few main things that really stick out to you that you're like, that is really neat, or man, I wonder why they do that. I know something for me was the student union. The student union in the US is very different from the student union in the UK, at least for me it was. And it was something that I thought was pretty neat. Now in the US, primarily it's students go there to study. There's a lot of club meetings there. There's fancy banquets, things like that. There's a few restaurants, but if you go there late at night, there's really not going to be anyone there. At least on my campus, there wasn't. But in the UK, there was an actual dance club. There was a pub, and students really utilized it. They found it to be a place to mingle with other students, to relax. On the weekends, they would go and have a drink in the pub with their friends, or during the weekends, they'd be going to the dance club. There was always events going on. So it was a really big difference for me, and it was something that I thought was really neat. I never even heard that as a difference, and I'm sure that you'll have a lot of cool things that stick out to you as well, something that you'll remember forever, and there'll be a lot of different things. It'll be shocking at first, but it'll be very interesting as well. All right, so let's look at the next option. It's cheaper travel. The next item is cheaper travel. So whenever you study in the UK, as I mentioned before, it's pretty compact. It's all right there together, so you'll have access to travel throughout the entire UK, typically at a fairly reasonable price. There's a lot of companies in the UK also that make travel very convenient, very cheap, such as Megabus, Ryanair, EasyJet. Those are all three that if you study abroad in the UK, you'll definitely want to take advantage of. If you miss those, it's Ryanair, Megabus, EasyJet. You might be familiar with one or two of those as we do. They're starting to creep into the US and other countries, but take advantage of those. They might not be the most convenient, the most relaxing trip. You'll probably have a few stops along the way. It's going to be very close quarters, but it's going to save you a lot of money, enough maybe even to take one extra whole trip in the end with what you've saved. So make sure that you find ways to use those discounted companies. Also an NUS card. Make sure that you get an NUS card. That's going to give you access to a lot of discounts, including travel. So whenever you get over there, make sure that you get your hands on one of those. That way you can get even better deals as a student who's traveling. All right, higher cost of living. So studying in the UK, it is going to be a bit more expensive as far as your daily living costs go. As you can see, this is just living costs for the year. It could be close to around $6,800 pounds, which is about $11,000. This was according to a recent survey by HSBC. Now keep in mind that this is going to vary greatly depending on how you live your life, what you're buying every weekend, what you like to spend your money on. This is going to vary, but this is an approximate amount. Now, if you are inside of London, it's going to significantly raise the cost of living. It'll raise it up to about £13,000, which is approximately $21,000. So keep that in mind. You want to make sure that you have those funds readily available to you. Of course, this is on top of your actual tuition fees, so you'll want to factor that in. Just like anywhere else that you are, though, the cost of living is going to vary depending on where you're located, how you're spending your money. So this isn't set in stone, but it's something to definitely start with to base it off of. So. All right, so these are the main things that I'd like you to keep in mind, or if you're trying to study, outside of your home country, trying to decide between the US, UK, these are some things that you'll want to keep in mind. You can get more information on studying in the UK here at internationalstudent.com/study_UK/. That will give you a bit more information on studying in the UK. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of your questions that have come in. Okay, so we have the first one is about a scholarship. Hey, I'd like to know how the process to get a scholarship is, what are the requirements, and how can I apply to get one? All right, so on internationalstudent.com, we have a scholarship search. On there, you can filter by where you're from, where you're going, and then what you're studying. So I highly recommend going to internationalstudent.com. And then you can use that scholarship search and find a scholarship for you. It's a database of scholarships, so each one will have their own eligibility requirements. So some might be available for citizens of France who want to study in the UK, or perhaps citizens of the UK who want to study in Spain. They're all going to have their own requirements. So make sure that you check the eligibility, but that will give you a good list of scholarships. That way you can narrow them down and see which ones you're eligible for and how to apply by looking at that information. All right, the next one from Cassandra. I'm going to Scotland in mid-May next year. Do you have any tips about what I should wear? It's going to vary greatly depending on your style and how the actual weather is while you're over there. What I would recommend doing is first of all, checking the weather, because it's not to say that weather is always going to be specific during one time of year or not. Sometimes you can be thrown for a curveball. Research the weather first of all. What I can say though, some really good solid travel items include, make sure that you bring some good sturdy boots. I know whenever I was in Scotland, we did everything from shopping to going and hiking. They have some really good hiking there. So wear some shoes that are really flexible yet fashionable. That's what I would advise. So check the weather, think about what you're going to be doing, and then go from there. My one go-to though, I would say versatile boots. So strong enough for taking a good hike to both shopping on the streets. That would be my one piece. All right, is it better to stay at the campus or rent an apartment with a group of people? That's going to be a personal choice. There's a couple of things though that you'll want to keep in mind. First of all, the cost. Whenever you rent an apartment, you'll want to keep in mind that you're going to have to be paying for things like electric, water, if you'd like cable, internet, things like that. So you'll want to factor in all of those along with the rent, and then the number of individuals that you're actually going to be living with, up against what it costs to live on campus. Usually living on campus is going to be a little bit cheaper, but not always. But it also depends on what kind of living conditions you're looking at, what kind of apartment. If it's a luxury apartment, it's probably going to be more expensive. If you don't mind, sharing a room with someone in an apartment, you might be able to save some money. Something else also is keep in mind that those roommates that you'll be choosing to live with in the apartment, that's who you'll be with for the entire year. So if you guys have an argument, if you have a little squabble, that's who you're going to be in a lease agreement with. Now, if you live on campus, you're not going to have to worry about that. Plus, you have access to everyone else who's living in the residence halls, in the halls of residence. So you'll have a large group of students that could be your potential new best friend. All right. Let's see. Is it possible to get a job, and how easy is it to balance between work and school? It is. If you're going to be studying in the UK, there are possibilities. What you'll always want to do, though, is make sure that you talk to your international student office to make sure that you are in compliance with the legalities around it. You don't want to be working whenever you're not legally able to do so. So while it is possible, you'll want to talk to your international student office and see if you are eligible, what options there are. But you are correct. It's going to be difficult to balance work and school. You know, if sometimes you can find on-campus jobs where you're able to study, they're a little bit more flexible. If you do an off-campus job, it's going to be eating at a lot more of your time. So it could really hinder what you're actually there to do, and that's study. Of course, your studying should be first priority. So you need to take that into consideration, consider how well you're able to balance time, and be realistic about it, because you don't want to make you know, poor grades because you're working a few hours a week. So think about yourself, how you're able to prioritize and how you're able to manage time, and talk to your international student office, and those items should help you with that. Okay. Looks like we don't really have any other questions here. I'll give you one more second. If you did not answer the questions, or if we went through them too quickly, you can feel free to go back through and answer those as well now. Maybe try your hand at the British English. All right, I don't think we have any others. Hopefully you guys learned a bit more information today on what to expect when you study abroad in the UK. If we did not get to your question, I apologize. We'll go back in and get to that later. There's a slight delay, so hopefully we did get them all answered. But hopefully we see you next time, and good luck.